What's going on, you animalistic, aristocratic aardvarks? Welcome to episode 14 of Total Pod Mode. My name is James, also known as Mr. Bames, and I am, as always, joined by the wonderful Will, also known as Who the Funk.
Oh,
Much more energy than I was expecting from you this week, not gonna lie.
yeah, I thought I'd try and come in strong and then I'll peter out as we get to the end. I'm already feeling myself peter out, to be honest. We start off strong and then immediately fall over.
Well, so for the benefit of our listeners and viewers, both Will and I are pretty sick this week.
It's the worst timing.
So
the show must go on.
The show must go on, but apologies if there's a distinct low energy and
nasally noise.
Exactly. At least
Coughing,
this time I've got
spluttering.
my fucking mic plugged in properly, but still, probably it'd be best if I didn't. But
I'm sure James will do his best to edit out all of the coughing, spluttering, and sniffing.
yeah. And who knows, maybe as a little cheeky bonus, I'll keep him in there right at the end for you lovely people. Just
like a supercut of all of the coughs, sneezes, and
just
sniffles.
It'll
sound like some of the music you listen to.
Oh, dear me. All right, before we crack on with the show, get those old socials done. You can, as always, find the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you can find podcasts, really. Just search Total Pod Mode and you're sure to find us. We also post regular video content of our playthrough, stream highlights, as well as the podcast on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on Twitter by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
And whilst you're there, you can find me at Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM.
And you can find me at WhoDeFunk on Twitter, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/WhoDeFunk.
Now, let's do a catch-up before we both keel over and die.
Let's crack it.
So I'll start us off because mine's going to be nice and fucking quick. I have, because of my illness, basically played nothing this week apart from challenge stuff. So I was really hoping that I might have been able to jump into Warzone 2.0, which obviously came out this week at the time of recording. But alas, hasn't been to be, unfortunately. So how about you, man?
Well, I mean, I could also say that I've had my own challenge this week that has kept me away from doing much gaming, but that challenge was just not succumbing to COVID. So,
Yeah. And you're doing very well.
I seem to be doing pretty well at the start. No spoilers. I don't want to get ahead of myself for the challenge section. But
dude, wait till the second half of the game.
I still have a wait till the end game, bro.
Yeah, exactly. Once you've completed COVID, there's a bunch of bonus missions to do. And
shit. Okay. Is there New Game Plus? Is there COVID Plus at the end?
COVID 20, mate.
COVID 20. Oh, shit. Okay. As long as it doesn't become a new yearly release, I'm fine.
Yeah, I hope not. Yeah.
So on a more serious note, I did actually manage to cram in some gaming this weekend. Unsurprisingly, though, it is still Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 related. I'm very pleased to say, though, that I was actually able to complete the campaign this week, which was
nice.
quite an achievement for me. I was very happy to be able to do that. And I've just got like a few observations, I guess, around that campaign and how I got on. So one of the points that I brought up in the previous podcast was that the game seemed to be lacking a certain amount of sort of epic, bombastic moments and sort of crazy action sequences and set pieces and things like that.
Yeah, I remember you saying it was particularly disappointing.
Yeah, it just didn't really seem to have any of that. The previous Call of Duty titles, at least the ones that I played, did have. So there was a certain mission that finally kind of gave me some of those crazy moments in the game, where you're actually tailing a terrorist convoy in a helicopter and you are shooting out of the helicopter, and eventually you fall out of the helicopter and you are still attached by your sort of safety rope, the clip onto the helicopter. But obviously you're just dangling from a helicopter at that point, upside down, swinging in between traffic, chasing a convoy shooting at you, that was quite a cool set piece. I quite enjoyed that.
That's very action film of them.
Absolutely, yeah. God, and if that isn't typical for the Call of Duty franchise, is just rip off a bunch of action scenes.
I was going to say, I swear like The Rock does that in a film or something.
They take as many action movie scenes as they can and they slap them into the game. It's even like... I think it was actually the last Modern Warfare 2 where they had the snowmobile chasing down the icy mountain scene straight out of one of the James Bond movies. I think in that same movie, you're also firing a shotgun off of the back of kind of a Harley-style motorbike and reloading it exactly the way Arnold Schwarzenegger does in Judgment Day. They just take all those references and feed them back into the games, and hey, it works, for that first or second time you play it, at least.
I guess it makes sense that I feed on that nostalgia.
Yeah, absolutely.
And set pieces like that, they're proven to work. So I guess why not rip them? I'd copy them into your game.
Yeah.
I wasn't accusing Activision of ripping anyone off. Honestly.
That was too close.
But just to build on that scene, so after you are dangling from the helicopter and you've shot some guys on the back of the convoy, you decide that dangling from a helicopter probably isn't the best way to complete the mission. So you reach inside your boot, pull out a combat knife and cut yourself free and land on top of one of the cargo trucks of the convoy that you're chasing. And this is where things start to get really fun. The game then, you enter into the sequence where you're relatively towards the back of the convoy and you need to fight your way to the front of it by hopping from vehicle to vehicle on the roofs.
Okay.
Once you've jumped onto the roof of a vehicle, you can press the enter vehicle button and you'll hijack in the same way you do in loads of action games. You know, you grab the dude, chuck him out, jump in.
Yeah.
Once again, another familiar scene from Judgment Day 2. Grabbing a dude out of a 16-wheeler, chucking him to the side and driving it.
Nice.
And what you actually have to do is, as you're fighting your way through the convoy, obviously your vehicles are taking damage. You need to get out of your vehicle, jump onto the roof, Just Cause 2 styly, and then hop to another vehicle, take that one, and keep fighting your way up the convoy. And that was probably the most exciting mission, I've got to say, in the whole campaign, because at one point you start chasing a truck which is chucking out mines, and you've got to avoid those while stealing other cars and also being shot at. And I've got to say, actually, now that I've completed the game, I think that probably was the sort of the craziest scene in the game, and I really enjoyed that, and I was glad that they put some stuff like that in. I still say, though, that on balance, the previous Modern Warfare or Call of Duty franchise as a whole has definitely had more sort of crazy action set pieces in them than this title so far. But I did find that bit really enjoyable.
That does sound really cool, actually. It's not something I particularly expect from a Call of Duty game, having not played too many campaigns.
Yeah, me neither.
All sounds a bit too crazy. Like, I would have thought they would be more conservative in their set pieces, but hey, pleasantly surprised, man. That sounds really fun, actually.
I think it's probably not the fact that it was sort of not so conservative. I think the fact that it just incorporated a lot of gaming elements that you don't typically see in a Call of Duty campaign, sort of like extended driving sequences and transitioning from vehicle to vehicle. Obviously, I do need to sort of point out that the last Call of Duty game I played before Modern Warfare 2 was Modern Warfare, so I have sort of missed out a few, so there may well be scenes in some of the later games after that.
Was Modern Warfare not the one that came out just before, though?
Yeah, but then, like, 2 other titles released since then, didn't there? I think there was like
there's
Cold War and
Vanguard.
That was it. Vanguard and Cold War, I believe, came out since then.
I completely forgot about Cold War because I don't think it did very well, did it?
I know a fair few people that bought it, but I think that most people were just like, this is a shame. I want to go back to modern guns and things like that, and they didn't take it there.
In my mind, it went Modern Warfare 2. I completely forgot about those two.
Yeah.
There you go.
Dumb
I think that's probably the same for a lot of people there, to be honest with you. I know that the Modern Warfare online community was still pretty active, even with those games sort of coming out since. And typically on Call of Duty, you tend to see a pattern where there's kind of a mass migration apart from, a small handful of users onto the next titles.
Yeah.
Unless there's an absolute clanger like Ghosts or something like that, where everyone just kind of sticks to the previous one.
That one still hurt. Ghost is the reason I didn't get super into Call of Duty. Because I loved Black Ops 2 and I was hyped for the next one, which was Ghosts, and it was shit. And by all accounts, Infinite Warfare and some of the other ones in between weren't great either. Is it Infinite Warfare or
Advanced Warfare? I actually quite liked that one. I liked the additional mobility, but it just didn't feel like a Call of Duty game. So it was, I liked it. Felt more like a kind of a Halo game with a very quick time to kill. But I loved the evading in that game. I got to say, I used to really value the fact that you could kind of just do a very quick sidestep and stuff like that. I was often winning out gun battles by quickly zipping behind someone and shooting them in the back if they were getting me in the back from up close. Or you would jump into the air, they would start shooting you, you could air dodge to the side and then finish them off because they'd missed where you'd gone, sort of thing. So there was actually quite a lot of cool stuff in there.
That definitely sounds like Halo, though. Yeah, you're right.
Right, exactly. None of that sounds like a Call of Duty game. Yeah, there's an air evade in Advanced Warfare. Honestly, it's a good game, just not a Call of Duty game. There was also another cool mission, which introduced some mechanics that I hadn't done before. So at one point, you get betrayed and you end up behind enemy lines without a weapon. And you actually need to sneak around the environment. And it even gives you a kind of a basic crafting system where you have to steal things like wax, adhesive, Fallout 4, anyone? And you actually have to craft sort of improvised explosives. You need to make a shiv. You need to make something that can pry open locks, a little bit like Last of Us. You make a kind of a breaking open tool so you can get inside chests.
Could your shiv not do that?
No, unfortunately, not like Last of Us. Your shiv doesn't. Right. But it was definitely one of those bits where it just felt really refreshing. It felt like a nice change of pace and break to the sort of established gameplay that you were playing at that point. I guess the other thing is that if you did get discovered, unlike a lot of missions, which are stealth missions in Call of Duty, the game doesn't end. You actually have the opportunity to run away and hide again, break enemy line of sight, and recuperate and continue with the mission. So
no bullshit. You were spotted, so you must fail now and start again. Okay, that's cool.
yeah, exactly, which is just so typical of Call of Duty. It's like you must play it this way, and if you don't do exactly what the game wants you to do, mission over.
That's really refreshing to hear.
Yes, yeah. That was very enjoyable, and I very much enjoyed making all manners of sort of trip mines, smoke bombs, and things like that.
Very MacGyver of you. Here's some toothpaste, a piece of bark, and some dental floss, and I want you to make a tripwire landmine.
Pretty much. That's kind of what it felt like.
Nice.
So, and as I mentioned, I did actually manage to complete the campaign. The final mission was pretty cool. There was a tank battle, which you actually fight in a destructible environment, which was kind of cool as well. And it actually felt, honestly, weirdly a lot like Battlefield. Like the way that the mechanics worked for the building exploding and stuff as the tank was chasing me, it was very much akin to Battlefield.
Nice.
And it just left me with this feeling like, okay, so why isn't environmental destruction featuring more heavily in the rest of the game, you know? Because it looks good. It works well, in my opinion.
Maybe they wasted all their resource on that one level. Yeah, I mean, because I don't know how much data, memory, CPU, whatever that would take to do. So maybe that's why they couldn't put it in the whole game, or maybe they were just like, fuck it, we'll give it a try and see what happens. Because let's be real, Battlefield are the dons when it comes to that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's probably something to do with the fact that the Frostbite engine was built with environmental destructibility in mind. Maybe it was a bit of a proof of concept, and we'll see it feature more heavily in future titles. I would love to see it because, you know, I've got an honest memory of playing Battlefield Bad Company 1, and the first time I punched a hole in a wall with a grenade launcher round, I thought, holy shit, the next Call of Duty is going to be wild when you can do this, because there's no way that they're not going to include that in the next Call of Duty. And then, you know, here we are, like, what, almost 15 years later or more, But the campaign wasn't the only thing I managed to dip my toes into this week. So thankfully, due to the release of Warzone 2.0 and the Battle Pass this week, I got to have a little quick look into those.
Nice. Did you buy the Battle Pass then?
Because I bought the Vault edition of the game, I got the Battle Pass included in that package, along with like sort of 5 level skips or whatever, like or 50 Battle Pass tokens or something.
Nice. Get that VIP premium treatment, baby.
yeah. Well, I don't think it was much more expensive than just buying the base edition of the game. And considering at the time I knew I was going to buy the Battle Pass anyway, it just seemed like a good idea to do it. Yeah,
and Battle Pass is normally what, £10-15 anyway, so
yeah, exactly.
Probably what you paid different. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and also, you know, I had a pretty strong feeling that I was going to get quite heavily into this Call of Duty, it being a return to Modern Warfare.
Yeah.
And after my disappointment with Battlefield 2042, I knew that Call of Duty was going to be the FPS that was going to carry me through until the next one. Just quickly back to the Battle Pass, though. So the Battle Pass now, instead of being a linear system where you have levels 0 or levels 1 to 50 or something like that, it's actually a map now with around 20 different sectors on it. You have a start point on the map, a bit like a board game, and then you need to... So each of the 20 sectors of the map has 5 Battle Pass items included in it. Okay. You start off in one corner of the map, unlocking Sector 1, and then you progress to unlock Sector 2, Sector 3, but you can unlock adjacent tiles. So if Sector 1 is next to Sector 4, you don't need to go numerically, you can just go straight to Sector 4 and then to whatever, Sector 6 if Sector 4 is next to. There's a bit of tactical thinking in there because obviously not all of these sectors you're even going to necessarily want to unlock because they might not have the things you want in there. So you can straight up just skip past those, so it actually enables you quite a bit more freedom in terms of how you spend your points. And the way that you unlock these sectors is the fact that after you complete each match, you get these Warzone tokens, I think they're called.
Right.
And then you use those tokens, 1 token per unlock, to unlock each of the 5 items associated with that sector. You can only unlock the next section once you've unlocked every single aspect of the current sector that you're in. Typically, there's 1 free item per each sector that won't cost you a Warzone token to unlock, but the other 4 will. And the 5th unlock for each sector is only available once you've done all the other 4.
Got ya. So you can't go out of order in any way, shape or form. That makes sense. What you just described to me there, though, reminds me of, do you remember the show Catchphrase?
It looks a lot like that.
Yeah, where like you have to pick, when you're doing the final round, you have to get 5 across the board and you can pick whichever one you want adjacent to it. But if you get it wrong, you have to start again. Reminds me of that. That's what it sounds like.
Honestly, it's not too dissimilar to that, except that
Yeah.
there's no sort of starting again thing. But absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah, you need to you channel a path through the battle pass. And I got to say,
Yeah.
I don't know if there's like more stages to this, but I appear to have like unlocked half the battle pass already just with my level skips that I got from the Vault edition.
I assume they'll add to it, right? Because if they're just doing sections of a map, you could just tack loads more on, I suppose.
Well, I mean, do remember that essentially this is, when you think about it, I think most battle pass levels, there are either 50 or 100 of them. Yeah. There is 20 sectors with 5 each, so you're still looking at 100 items, basically. So it's the same number of items, it just gives you a bit more freedom in how you select them, which order you unlock them, or if you want to just ignore them completely and save your points for something else.
And will those points carry over to the next battle pass, do we know? I would assume not, because that's not normally how they do it.
I actually would assume that they would do that, just given the kind of the freedom that they're trying to portray with this battle pass.
Okay, fair. That's interesting. I would have thought you'd have a season 1 point tally that you could only use season 1 perks, and then if there's a season 2 one, they'd have new ones, because otherwise people might just save up and then be able to clear the season 2 one straight away. But hey.
I think that that's kind of what they're enabling with this, intentionally. So that'd be great if they do. It does remain to be seen, though.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be uncharacteristically cool of a big company. But
yeah.
Hey.
Surprise, motherfucker!
They now offer a third-person Battle Royale mode, so if you fancied playing Call of Duty Fortnite Battle Royale without the building, then that is open to you.
Okay.
So yeah, they've implemented that back into the multiplayer, and now it's also come back for the Warzone game mode, and it works well, surprisingly well, and it controls surprisingly well, and the animations and things like that for your characters, they all look pretty good. So
fair. I'd heard that they'd given consoles a field of view slider, but going third person's a bit extreme, right?
Yeah.
Nice to have the option though, because I'm sure some people prefer playing like that.
Absolutely. And I think it's just it's a bit of fun, really. It's, hey, are you bored of playing typical Call of Duty? Then stick on third person for a bit, for a bit of a fun break. It feels less sweaty, less serious, and more like a fun time, But as you would imagine, with third person mode, it enables you to do things like peek around walls and stuff like that, because the camera's pulled back.
And you get to look at your lovely skin.
Yeah, exactly. You can look at your operator skin the entire game rather than just during the end cutscene.
Shout outs to the German bloke with the weed ghillie suit from Warzone 1.
I hope they bring that back. There's also a couple different ways that the BR safe zone can work now. So there's actually something called Circle Collapse, where the safe zone actually splits into 3 different circular safe zones, and then as the game comes to an end, they finally converge back into one big safe zone.
Okay,
so that
that's
will,
kind of neat.
Allow players to sort of be separated off. Heck, you might even end up in a zone without another player in it, and then you kind of just sat wandering around until they reconverge. Although I imagine that they would probably figure out a way to avoid that from happening, because I don't know how long it takes for those rings to separate and reconverge, but if that's anywhere near like 5-10 minutes, you just sat there wondering what to do for that time.
That's quite cool though, because that means you could have, in theory, sort of 2 or 3 battles for supremacy going on. Teams could get completely rinsed, have 1 player each with no health going into the final conversion, and then it's like, hell yeah.
Absolutely.
That's kind of cool, yeah.
And I would also hope that it would reduce instances of third partying, where you're sort of engaging another enemy squad, and then just as everyone's depleted and out and putting their armor packs in, a third squad comes sweeping in and just gets everyone, sort of thing. That's something that is a particular issue for me in other BR games that I've played, like Apex Legends. And I think that having a sort of a split circle safe zone like that might actually prevent that sort of behavior and encourage kind of people to fight their own battles.
Yeah, will also mean snipers will have a good premium too. Because if you can kill people in a different safe zone from distance, that's going to be pretty powerful.
I have a feeling that they may well make that quite difficult, given how dense the fog is. I imagine it'd be very difficult to see someone through there. Really depends on how far these safe zones are spread out as well.
Yeah. Shout outs to the HDR. That'll be really handy in that. In that game.
And just a very few last things that I noticed the difference in Warzone. So now the Gulag can actually be a 2v2 fight. So if you're in there with a teammate, you can actually take on another enemy team with 2 people. So that certainly makes Gulag fights a lot more interesting, because of it sort of adds a certain layer of predictability and coordination with your teammate. You can cover one angle, they can cover one angle, and you can sort of eliminate the chances of being snuck up on or someone peeking around a corner and things like that.
Yeah, so it works similar to Warzone 1, where if you had someone above watching that was in your team, they could still relay info to you on the mic, but actually they can help out shooting now as well. as opposed to just lobbing a rock that does nothing.
And also, there is no flag in the center of the gulag to capture that I've seen. So you could also win the gulag battles. After a certain time, the flag would spawn in the middle and you could capture it. If the other person was still running around looking for you and you managed to get to the flag, you would win the gulag. So due to the fact that there is no flag, there is now another element of the game that allows you to win other than killing the other team, which is a jailer will spawn, which is essentially a juggernaut armed with a Gatling gun in the center of the map, and it's the first person to take him out. Obviously, the game doesn't stop, so you'd better not just unload all your clip onto the juggernaut, because then the enemy team can come around, they'll hear your shots, they know where you are, they'll kill you before you kill the juggernaut. Yeah. But it does add in another element of the gameplay which puts pressure on you. Obviously, the jailer comes out, he's following you around the map, you've got to run away, he'll force you out of a spot if you're hiding in it, if he knows where you are. So that's another, kind of interesting element that they've added into the gulag, which kind of makes it a more fun experience, makes it seem a bit more diverse.
Yeah, that sounds like quite a positive change, actually, because that's gives it a little bit more tension than just capturing a flag in the middle, right?
Yes, absolutely. But I think that's me pretty covered in terms of the Call of Duty news for this week. I feel like I've gone on quite a bit there, actually. I didn't intend to, but yeah, there's been quite a lot of new content released this week.
I'm saying, for someone who's been fucking ill, you've done quite well there.
I'm sat here sniffing and currently dripping in sweat, so I think that...
So worth it.
Worth it. Oh, mate, you're never going to stop us. The commitment to this podcast is real.
Yeah, until we're both just skeletons talking.
Yeah.
That's us now all caught up, so how about we move on to the news for this week? So our first news story this week, Blizzard has announced that it will be suspending game services in China. Now, this is because they have failed to reach a new publishing agreement with NetEase. As a result of this, a bunch of titles will no longer be available to the Chinese player base. Notably, World of Warcraft, StarCraft, Warcraft 3 Reforged, Overwatch, Diablo 3, Hearthstone, and Heroes of the Storm. So some pretty big titles in there.
Yeah, basically all of the Blizzard big titles.
Yeah, all the good ones. All the good ones.
All the good Blizzard ones, anyway.
Oh, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So I'm not sure who NetEase are.
Apparently it's their Chinese partner, because a statement made by Blizzard Entertainment claims that it could not reach an agreement with Chinese partner NetEase that is consistent with Blizzard's operating principles and commitments to players and employees.
Okay.
Whatever the fuck that means. So basically, I guess tough shit to the Chinese players, right? Which seems pretty harsh to me, but apparently Blizzard games will not be pulled from China immediately. They will lose access to flagship titles on the 23rd of January 2023.
So not long then, only a couple months.
Yeah, it really is only a couple of months. Interestingly, the remaining content releasing in 2022 will still be available, which includes Season 2 of Overwatch 2, the new World of Warcraft expansion Dragonflight, and a new Hearthstone, I assume a Hearthstone DLC, March of the Lich King. But presumably then when the main games go offline, they'll also go offline. So that seems kind of weird. But then interestingly as well, and lucky guys, right? Service for Diablo Immortal will avoid termination because that has a different licensing agreement with NetEase. So,
so you mean the one that is pay to win, absolute travesty of a game?
Basically, the one that everyone would like to be cancelled is the one that they're keeping, right?
Because that one is going to make them the most money, undoubtedly.
So yeah, a bit of an odd one this, according to the article, which is from our good friends at Gamerant.
Such good friends that you say their name wrong.
Hey, me and the ant are good buddies. Man,
oh,
right?
I see. It's me that's wrong.
It's the internet that's wrong. I'm the only one that's right.
You're so dumb.
But yeah, as I say, apparently the two companies have worked together since 2008, so seems a bit of an odd one that they haven't been able to come to an agreement.
Yeah.
And it's even more odd considering that China is quite a large proportion of Blizzard's player base, particularly with things like World of Warcraft, right? I mean, that's huge out there. So seems a strange one to me. And looking at the article, doesn't look like that a resolution is on the cards, at least in the short term. So
that was going to be my next question, was that obviously this is, they're failing to reach a publishing agreement right now, but, you'd imagine that these huge titles aren't just going to disappear from China forever. But I'm not seeing anything to suggest that they do have a plan to get these back. So I can only assume that this is going to be a kind of watch this space.
You'd have to think that they'd find a new Chinese partner, right? There's no way that those games can stay offline in China for long, right?
I'm sure that there won't be a lack of volunteers
No.
to take over from NetEase. However, I'm sure that Blizzard are kind of keen to make sure that they get a good partner in this and someone that's reliable as well. So I think that may be taking some time.
And it will take time as well, because if they've been working together since 2008, that ecosystem is going to be so intertwined that it's going to take some unraveling and re-raveling when they find someone. So I guess for the moment, watch this space. And as things develop, we'll be sure to keep people updated on goings-on in Blizzard in China. So our second news story today is that Ubisoft and Riot are working together to make tools to prevent player toxicity.
Okay. What are they doing? Is it like text recognition or voice-to-text recognition, where every time you shout a slur, it bans you, or what's going on?
Well, interestingly, apparently what they're doing is they're partnering together to look into AI technology to moderate toxicity in gaming communities.
I assume this has to be player toxicity across communications, because I don't know. I mean, there's more than one way to be toxic in a multiplayer game. I mean, the actions that you can take in the game themselves can be toxic.
I was going to say, a lot of people find teabagging toxic, right?
Yeah, right. What are they going to do? Like, every time you stand over a certain player and mash the B button, it's like whenever there's repeatedly mashing of the crouch button, they're like, we need to review the footage. My God, he dunked it. He dunked him.
Well, if it's an AI, they wouldn't be reviewing the footage, right? There'd be a set criteria. Presumably, there'd be a set criteria. If you crouch on someone's face more than four
once.
times, no, give them 4.
First few might have been innocent crouches. Okay, they might have just been hiding behind cover over an enemy.
Exactly, it might be like panic spamming. You know, these things happen, right? But if it's 4 or more,
then you know. Then you know.
Yeah. So Ubisoft and Riot have said that toxicity in online games is an issue that gaming studios continue to struggle to address, although not through lack of trying. And they're looking to try and find an automated tool to, quote, try and catch all issues because humans can't oversee everything, which is presumably means that if someone reports something, they're going to have an automated system to review it rather than having someone in the support team look at it potentially weeks later. Maybe it'd be something more instantaneous. But
that's interesting. So that's not how I understood that. When you said that, I kind of understood it that meant that basically we don't have enough time to manually review everything, or we don't have enough time to do all of that. So we're just going to use an algorithm to flag all of that stuff initially. Have I misunderstood that?
No, it's potential that I've misunderstood it, man. I mean, it's relatively vague at this stage.
I mean, I've certainly heard of people being sort of banned by algorithms before and things automatically in games. And it generates a lot of sort of anger from the player community, because you can guarantee that at one point or another, the algorithm or the AI to detect these toxic behaviors is going to just get the wrong person, or it's going to flag someone unexpectedly and then they get banned. And it really depends on a lot of things there. But I mean, if your account gets banned, I've, read Reddit threads before where people have been banned from games. They've lost their entire inventory, and that's in things like Rocket League and stuff like that. So I think that, it could be quite risky without having quite a few safety measures in place to ensure that if people are flagged falsely or identified as hacking when they're not, or being toxic when they're not, then there needs to be a method of recourse for them to be able to get their accounts back. Otherwise, you're going to have people not even wanting to play these games for fear that they'll stick 150 odd hours into it, and then one day, just because they crouched 5 times on someone's head, that they no longer have all their sexy skins.
No, and that's a very, very good point you've made there. Like, if they are going to go with the fully automated algorithm, which doesn't really have that margin for error potentially, there is definitely going to have to be some sort of external review policy anyway for if someone is incorrectly flagged. And to me, on the face of it at least, that sounds like they're just doubling up their work, because if you're going to have a human review it anyway, why not just have the human review it to begin with, right?
Yeah.
But I guess if it gets through some of that bloating, because there probably is, I mean, it probably happens more regularly than certainly I'm aware of, then, maybe it just slam dunks the easy wins, and then the more serious cases do still have to be reviewed. But it's certainly interesting.
Yeah, I'll be certainly looking forward to hearing more about this AI system for preventing player toxicity, because I'm sure I'm going to fall foul of it, James, with my Riot Shield Molotov fart gas thing. So,
you'll definitely get flagged for that. Yeah.
Thankfully, this is Ubisoft and Riot, which have nothing to do with Call of Duty. So the most I have to deal with is angry children screaming at me.
final thing about this, how this AI is going to work slightly. So what it's going to do is they're going to put together a database of sort of player information, player patterns, chat logs, all that good stuff. It's going to then have the algorithm set to what's toxic, and it'll be looking for that. It's being researched now as new technology, and the R&D departments are hopeful, apparently, that it will be able to hit the industry at large in 2023. So who knows? I would have thought they might need to do a little bit more research than that, but then who knows how long they've already been working on it. So
yeah,
once again, watch this space. But if it works, I think that could be really cool. But it's a big, big if. Third news story of the week is perhaps unsurprisingly that the Game of the Year nominations have been announced for this year.
Ooh,
indeed.
So who are they going to be? Well, I have a pretty good feeling who they are going to be. At least 3 of them.
Go on then. I'll tell you if there's. So there's 6 games nominated for the big prize. There's obviously 31 categories, but we're only going to look at the Game of the Year today. What do you reckon's on there, man?
Okay, well, undoubtedly Elden Ring.
Yep.
Undoubtedly God of War.
Yep.
Stray, just because people like that game a lot for some reason.
Yep. 3 for 3 so far. 3 more
games this year. No. Those were the 3 that came to mind immediately when I was thinking that they obviously going to be up there.
And you're quite right. So well done for that. The other 3 being A Plague Tale Requiem.
Yeah.
Horizon Forbidden West.
Yeah. Okay.
And Xenoblade Chronicles 3.
Okay. Xenoblade's the only one that I haven't played out of that series of games.
You've played Ragnarok?
Oh God, no, sorry. I meant like of the series of games. So like, you know,
right.
I can discern what Ragnarok is kind of going to be like after playing the first one. Much like I can kind of discern that Forbidden West is an expanded version of Horizon Zero Dawn.
Fair. Well, I've only played Elden Ring in this slot, so I say that I've tried Stray briefly on a friend's console and was instantly put off by the fact you couldn't free jump everywhere. You can only jump up on certain bits that it lets you.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So I was like, okay, fuck this game. I want a free running parkour cat game. I don't want no forcing me to jump up on certain. I want to be able to jump on any ledge I want. I'm a cat, for fuck's sake.
I think that their intentions for the game were that it didn't look dopey. And I think that if they would have given you a free run, it would have looked janky, it would have looked silly, and that's just a byproduct of the fact that it gives you a free jump sort of thing. Whereas they wanted the kind of experience that you could watch someone play and it looks good from point A to point B sort of thing without having the jankiness there. But I do agree with you. I was disappointed in seeing that all of the jumps were essentially just walk to the edge and press a button as well. I was hoping to have a bit more control than that at least.
Yeah, exactly. But I haven't played the game, so I can't judge too fully. But no, what are your thoughts on the nominations, man? I mean, as you sort of alluded to, perhaps not great surprise in a few of them, but I must admit I didn't expect to see Plague Tale Requiem or Forbidden West in there, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I gotta say, well, having not played Forbidden West either, you know, only playing the original title, I'm a little bit surprised to see that one in there. But I mean, I gotta say, at the time the graphics were completely breathtaking. The enemy design looks really good. The only thing I can't really speak on, it's something that I felt like let down the first game a little bit, was that the way the narrative was delivered. Maybe they've sort of toned that up and made that a bit better in the second game, but I did find myself sort of very unintrigued by many of the characters and just sort of was pushing on the story to get through it as opposed to actually trying to find out what was happening.
No, I mean, I haven't played Zero Dawn or Forbidden West, so I can't really comment on that. I know that they're both good games in terms of from hearing from people that have played it, but yeah, I can't really comment on that. I'm not surprised to see Xenoblade Chronicles in there because that game, by all accounts, looks beautiful and runs beautiful. So not surprised at all. And I think it was relatively long wait for that one. So I think that the fans were very, very happy when it finally arrived.
I'm sure neither of us are surprised that Elden Ring has made it into those Game of the Year nominations.
Absolutely not at all. And I'm also not surprised that Ragnarok's made it in there, even though it only came out 2 weeks ago.
The hype around that game alone was going to carry that. I don't think even if people hadn't got hands on yet and they were just relying on sort of footage, they would still somehow find a way to get that into Game of the Year.
Oh, absolutely, man. Absolutely. But as I say, I'm surprised about Plague Tale Requiem. I believe that's the second in the series, right?
Yeah, that's right. A Plague Tale Innocence was the first one in the series, and that was kind of a fairly niche game. But I got to say, though, although, you know, I certainly didn't expect to see it in Game of the Year, I am seeing a lot of talk on the internet about A Plague Tale Requiem now, and a lot of people praising that game really highly. So I've added it to my list of things to go back and play, but I will definitely be starting with Innocence and then going on to Requiem later.
And so, as you say there, it surprises me a little bit because I didn't think Innocence had done that well. Like,
No,
it was
I
very
don't think
niche,
it
as you
has.
say. And I think those that played it liked it, but
I think this one had a bit more of a wider appeal and obviously benefited from the fact that people were, there was a small group of people more familiar with the Plague Tale series at that point, so there was more noise about it just based on that fact alone.
So, man, I've got to ask, who do you think's going to win?
Who's going to win? Honestly, I'm not really qualified to have an opinion on who I think should win, just given the fact that I've only actually physically played one out of the 6 of these games. But I can still seeing it being God of War Ragnarok due to the sort of the player base by and large preferring narrative-driven story games as opposed to extremely hard, drop you in the middle of nowhere and don't explain anything kind of games. I think that those are a bit more prohibitive to a lot of players. It does seem that in this kind of modern state of gaming that we're in, there is a lot of hand-holding going on and, a lot of sort of directions, waypoints and markers and things like that. And obviously Elden Ring chose to incorporate some of that to some degree, but way, way, way less than most games would.
Hey, man, they gave you a map.
They did. That was a big step forward. And they let you put markers on it.
It's basically a waypoint. I probably agree with you, although I do have a slight problem with the fact that a game that's only going to have been available for about a month of the year is likely going to beat out a game that was released at the end of February and has had a lot more people play it and complete it. But that's the nature of the competition, right? So
I never take these Game of the Year things too seriously. It seems to be more of a popularity contest more than a quality contest.
Yeah, it's a lot more marketing than it is actual quality of game for sure, because otherwise you'd probably see some different games in some of these categories. But perhaps we can do that another time when we do our own Game of the Year podcast.
Yeah.
And the final little nugget of news we've got for you this week is a nice quick one, which should really come as no surprise to anyone who's been following this game. Dead Island 2 has been delayed again.
You cannot be serious!
But James, I saw a pre-rendered trailer footage of the game not less than a couple months ago. What do you mean it's being delayed? I saw pre-rendered footage.
I know, man. It's absolute nonsense, isn't it? So I think this is like legitimately like getting towards double figures for how many times this game's been delayed at this stage. But, basically it was due to come out 3rd of February 2023 from the last delay, and it's now been delayed to the 28th of April 2023. Not really much more we can say on this that hasn't been said already in the past, other than to say that the developer themselves actually said the irony of delaying Dead Island 2 is not lost on us.
I've just seen that the link for this PC Gamer article is, surprise, Dead Island 2 gets delayed for like the gajillionth time.
Yeah.
At this stage, I have a feeling that previously it was more about getting things off the ground, getting the right team in and things like that. I have a feeling that a lot of this stuff is now, this game is buggy as shit, and we need to fix this as much as possible before release. I would imagine that for a game that's being looked forward to by the player base this much, they really don't want to screw the pooch on this one.
Yeah, I still think they're gonna, but that's
yeah, absolutely.
Because if they announced this, years ago at this stage, surely the technology's moved on since they first started developing this. I don't know, man.
I think that's going to be a lot of the problem, though, isn't it? The technology has moved on, but the experience in handling that technology hasn't, because it's new, right? So they're dealing with much more complex systems than they were previously.
We'll see what happens, man. Dead Island 1 was a good time. I'm sure Dead Island 2 will be a good time. Let's see if we actually get to fucking play it before 2027, right? So with that, I think we come to the end of the news. So let's mosey on over to the
A Games Challenge! So, James, as the listeners are probably aware, last week I challenged you to complete Sekiro and get the Shura ending without using any of the ninja prosthetics. Also conscious of the fact that you were unwell during this week, and Sekiro is quite a demanding game, so lots of attention needed.
Yeah, and that was honestly tough at times. So as you've said there, basically from Monday night until, well, even still now, I've been pretty rough. Have only really been able to play games in sort of 2-hour stints before having to stop because feeling sick and not being able to focus on it. And as you say, particularly with Sekiro, where you need focus, that's a real challenge. Even more so with the restriction of not using prosthetics. Because as players of Sekiro will know, whilst not essential, the prosthetics can make your life a lot easier on a lot of bosses, right?
Hell of a lot easier. Bosses, enemies in the game, there's some of them that it's almost the definitive way to beat them is to use a specific prosthetic.
Exactly. So it was a challenge, and rightly so. It is called the Games Challenge. And initially, I was really not sure how this was going to go because I struggled with a boss that was relatively early on in terms of the Shura ending. So for those that don't know, the Shura ending is the quote-unquote bad ending of the game, the evil ending, but it's also comfortably the shortest ending. There's a lot less to do. I thought I was doing really well. Within 2 hours, I'd gotten to what I will sort of call my wall, because it was my wall, which was Genichiro Ashina, the first sort of...
The dude on the horseback?
No. The guy that cuts off your arm in the tutorial when you fight him again.
Yes. Yeah.
Fuck me, this guy was a bastard, man. Like, I won't go straight into him yet because there were a couple of bosses I did fight before, as you say. There was Matey on horseback, who was absolutely no problem. I'd beaten him before on my previous playthrough, so I knew his moves, I knew his pattern. That was fine. There was the tied up ogre boy, which was one of the ones that I'll first say where prosthetics would have been useful, because the firecracker makes that one just an absolute piece of piss.
Or the flame vent as well.
But yeah, so the ogre was a lot tougher without the prosthetics, but it's nothing I hadn't done before, so that was fine. And then the only other boss I did before that that's worth talking about is the flaming bull.
Oh, yeah. How did you find that? Because I found that quite difficult my first go, but then I figured out something and did it quite easily.
Again, I have done this one before, so I sort of knew what to expect, but it was still tough because the way to do it again efficiently is firecrackers. Because for those that haven't played the game before, firecrackers essentially make all beast enemies sort of go a bit mad and just stuns them and just lets you get in so much free damage that it basically trivializes them.
It also does a hell of a lot of poise damage as well, which is the kind of the main mechanic of this game, right? It's not about taking down their HP, really. It's about filling up their poise bar by successfully hitting them and making them parry to the point where you will break their poise and you're able to do a death blow.
Yeah, although you can still do the whittle down with health if you want to, but it's incredibly slow.
Well, you don't know how to play the game, as I've seen with a lot of people.
Well, you say that, man. There's we'll talk about some stuff. So the bull was tough, but I sort of knew what to do, which is you just run around it in circles, do the odd hit.
Chase it, basically. Don't let it get away from you. Just constantly be sprinting and benefit from the fact that you've got unlimited stamina.
Exactly. But there are points where it sort of stops and gets tired and you can then hit it in the head, which is where it does the most damage. But yeah, so died a few times to that, but really not too much trouble. And then we got to Genichiro Ashina, who was comfortably the boss that gave me the most difficulty in this entire run. Comfortably. That wasn't even close.
I can totally believe it, man. It was out of all the memories of the bosses that I've beaten in that game, probably my toughest boss fight. Also the coolest boss fight, though, I gotta say. Did you get to muck around with any of the lightning stuff?
I did, yes.
That's just such a cool mechanic to me. I loved that. I think it was amazing.
It is, but I was finding the distance you had to be from him for it to actually proc quite tough. So I'd end up getting shocked a few times because I was too close to him and things like that. But I've got to say, man, this boss was tough and it was very good fun, as you say. But my overriding emotion with it is that some of it was very questionable.
Really?
So he has some attacks where he's got a bow and arrow and a sword, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes with the bow and arrow, you'd dodge round him and you'd be to his side. He'd be facing away from you and his arrow would go almost 90 degrees and hit you. Sometimes when he was doing his thrust attack, and this is a hitbox versus animation problem rather than a game problem, but the sword clearly misses you, but you still get hit.
Yeah.
And this is something I actually found with a lot of bosses in Sekiro compared to Souls games, which is the FromSoft equivalent that I have the most experience with that I can compare it to. It's definitely their most sloppy work in terms of hitboxes versus animations, for sure.
Fair enough. Okay.
But I must say, particularly with this boss,
I got to say that's not something I experienced myself, but I take your word for it, sort of thing. Yeah, absolutely. But I think also we were doing different things. Like, this doesn't obviously excuse any of that stuff you were talking about, but for instance, I didn't try to dodge a single arrow. I parried everything. Like, I stopped dodging at all in that game, so I didn't notice those things. Yeah.
Eventually, I learned that you could just hold the block button and it did no damage, right?
Yeah.
But when I was first starting, I was trying to run round him to avoid the arrows. Because in my mind, if you're shooting in a straight line, I can run round and there's no issue.
Yeah.
And I'm aware that in Dark Souls that there's some arrow tracking. Like if you look at an arrow and you look to the side, it will eventually sort of start
It curves a
towards
bit,
you.
but what you're describing is the arrow coming out of the bow sideways
Yeah.
almost. Yeah.
And now maybe 90 degrees was a little bit of a sort of over-exaggeration from my part, but it was definitely coming out where it shouldn't have done, right?
Yeah.
It's physically impossible. And I was shouting at my PC, it's physically impossible for that to happen. But as you say, that's not really how you're meant to play this boss.
That doesn't excuse it though, because I mean, that's kind of janky, you know? It's like saying, oh, this game's buggy. It's like, well, you're not meant to play it like that. It's like, well, it's still buggy, you know? I get it, but yeah.
So that was pretty frustrating. So genuinely, I probably spent about 3-4 hours on this boss alone.
Oh, wow, yeah. No, same on my playthrough as well. Yeah, he took me a long, long time. Because that motherfucker's got a stage 2.
And stage 3.
Oh, God, yeah.
So it's like, fuck this guy. But as with most Souls games, once you get it, once you crack it, it's very satisfying when you actually beat the motherfucker. And a small aside, I do actually have another playthrough that I'd started, as I sort of mentioned last week. My controller broke, which is why I had to stop playing it. Once I'd beaten Genichiro Ashina on the challenge run, I actually went while I was in the zone, and I went and beat him again on my 1-2.
Nice.
Because I did it within 2 or 3 goes the second time.
It's amazing, isn't it, with Sekiro, the amount of different skill makes over everything. It's just once you've learned the rhythm and stuff like that, you're just good to go.
Once you know and you know, you've said this to me before. Shout outs to my mate Daniele. He's said this to me before. Once you get it, there's nothing quite like it in terms of the satisfaction level.
Yeah.
But the process to getting it,
it's tough.
Is a motherfucker.
You got to get beat like at least a third of the game to like get into it.
Especially as an experienced Souls player where dodging is sort of the main way to avoid things. Like dodging in this game fucking sucks, man. Like you use a quick step to dodge through an attack on occasion. You do not dodge backwards. You do not dodge to the side. You sprint or you jump. You do not dodge.
Literally, the only time you would ever need to dodge is when you want to do the Makiri counter, which is to parry to counter the stab moves.
Yeah.
It's the only time you need to press the dodge button.
Yeah, and fuck me, the timing of that got me killed a few times when I was learning that too.
It's tough. Yeah.
Because you also have to have the angle just right as well. Like you can't just do it. You have to be face on and
facing the sword. Yeah.
So the amount of times I dodged past him into the thrust, I'm just like, fuck you, game. I pressed the button, damn it.
So were you pressing forward and dodge then?
Yeah, I was doing the direction into where he was thrusting from.
You can just press neutral dodge. Just press dodge when it hits.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
That makes it a lot easier then, so you don't accidentally dodge past them and stuff like that. I find it makes the timing a bit easier to predict as well because you're stationary, but at least when you're both standing still, you can kind of gauge the timing a bit better.
Yeah, I must admit I thought you had to do the direction, so I probably skipped the instructions too quickly because I sort of knew about it already, but hey.
No, I got to say, that was my understanding initially as well, was that you dodge into the attack.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's what it does tell you, but if you do a neutral in this game, I think you don't do a backstep. I think you do a little forward dodge.
Perfectly possible, but it is ultimately a timing exercise. So once you get it, right?
And you're definitely right to mention the issues you had with it in comparison to Dark Souls, especially because there's a series that we're both big fans of.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you kind of have to just forget everything you've learned about it in a game that has a lot of similar feelings to it.
Yeah, for sure. But once you shed it, it does sort of become more second nature.
Yeah.
Although even like when I was getting it, I was still finding myself not deflecting sometimes. And I was even saying to I shout at myself a lot when I'm playing games. I was saying to myself, Holroyd, why the fuck are you not deflecting, man? Like, you know that's going to happen. You know you can deflect this. Why are you not doing it? And it's like...
It's muscle memory. It's unlearning.
But it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's press B and backwards or to the side. Like if you know that something's coming that you want to get out of the way of is what it is. But... finally beat the cunt, but took way too long. Wasn't happy at all, but there it is. And I will also use this opportunity to say that, and this is a positive thing, it's going to sound like I'm being negative, but this is a positive thing. At no point throughout my playtime of this did I feel powerful. And what I mean by that is, let's use Dark Souls again, right? You can get your weapon of choice. If you're struggling with a boss, you can go grind, buy some stuff, upgrade your weapon to a +5, for example. Instantly you're doing a lot more damage, right?
Yeah.
In this game, you can't really do that. The only way your damage upgrades is by beating certain bosses, not all bosses, and getting memories.
Yeah.
I believe there is another way to do it that involves collecting 3 mask pieces and then you can trade skill points for attack power. I wouldn't have been able to do it anyway because I think the third piece is part of the non-Shura ending.
You won't get that type of stuff until you're way later on in the game. That's
Exactly.
a real tough thing to do, yeah.
And I didn't have the resources all the time, so wouldn't have been a thing. But this was, as I say, this is a good thing, because in Dark Souls and Bloodborne even, really, you can become quite OP with certain builds by speccing in the right stats early and getting a decent early game weapon and making it +5, +10 or whatever. Whereas in this game, you actually have to get good.
Yeah.
At that specific boss, it was a nice change of pace for me. I enjoyed that.
Yes, no, I agree with you. There is certain measures that you can do to make the bosses a little bit easier for yourself. So obviously taking a different route and fighting some mini bosses, because the mini bosses typically drop an item that allows you to extend your health bar. So if you do hit an absolute roadblock, you can take another route. But I can appreciate that when you've got a week to do this and an uncertainty of just how much you're going to struggle with these bosses, you didn't want to take a quick trip to the Hirata estate and kill a few mini bosses there to get your health bar up, because that may have been valuable time that you needed to beat the final boss, for instance.
Well, not only that, but also with my limited playtime from being ill as well, it wasn't something I was prepared to do.
Yeah.
Sure, I did have to kill some mini bosses throughout my route because you have to. But not all of them give prayer beads, which is the item Will alluded to there that improves your health and posture. And I didn't have time to explore every single area to find ones that are just hidden around. Sure, I picked up a few by sort of looking in places, looking for the routes, because it's not obvious where you need to go a lot in this game. Now,
yes.
Even in the Souls games, it's not, but you can see where you're meant to go, right? You can sort of see.
I don't know, dude. The amount of time I was stuck at the Firelink Shrine before I figured out there was that little path around the back to take you to Undead Burg. God damn, I don't even want to admit how long that took me to find.
Well, to be fair, maybe it's a familiarity thing, right? But with this game, the amount of times I had to backtrack and be like, "F me, there's a place you can jump up there. I didn't see that."
Yeah.
And you have to get to one of the bosses you have to do for the Shura ending, the corrupted monk. You have to go to a place called the Abandoned Dungeon.
Yeah.
Fuck me if that didn't take me hours to find, because you go across the bridge, right, and the gate's locked to where it is, and if you don't look up and see that you can grapple to the top of it, it's not immediately obvious. And, when you're going quickly, you're not necessarily paying as much attention as you should. So I just ran back and was like, fuck it, I'm going to do a bunch of other stuff. And came back, and it was only really when I sort of looked and it popped up briefly, you've got that green circle. And I was like, something here. Sure enough, jumped down, go through one door, and I'm in the place I need to be. So.
And this guy, he's the one that's sort of in a massive dark chamber, right? It's almost pitch black chamber that you need to get around the side. Is it the guy that you need to use one of your sort of anti-ghost spell things on to beat?
No, that's Headless. Corrupted Monk is you have to go through the Abandoned Dungeon, beat a mini-boss called the Shiminin Warrior.
Oh, yeah, the Shiminin Warrior. Yeah. I know that one.
I know he's a guy that you do need Divine Confetti for so you can hit ghosts. Yeah, that's true. You need to beat it. Well, you don't need to beat him, but I beat him to get to where I needed to go. And then you have to go through this. It's called the Hidden Forest, and it's all misty and shit. You jump through a building, kill this poor bastard mini boss called Mist Demon or something. Easiest boss in the game, comfortably. You jump off the roof for one death blow, and then it's literally 2-3 hits, boom, done. Right. No attack whatsoever, no poise. And you get to a place called Mibu Village, where you then run through the whole village. I literally didn't stop for anything. I ran through the whole village, got to the Corrupted Monk at the end, and relatively tough boss fight. Wasn't the worst. Once you learn the move patterns, you can sort of bait them into doing certain moves that then give you an opportunity to go in and attack, and this is one of the ones where it's you don't necessarily need to do the poise stuff. You can just chip away at their health bar, run in, do a few hits, run around again, wait for them to do the attack that they can bait you in, come back in, do it, rinse, repeat. Only one death blow, so it wasn't too bad.
Nice.
But no, sort of going back to the point at hand there, it was tough to find your way around in this game when you sort of go into it at first and don't really know what's going on. But once you find the routes, it's then relatively linear and you can sort of do it, particularly if you're not looking for all the secrets, which I wasn't. Another boss that I've got to give a big shout out to, because it was probably the boss I had the most fun with.
Oh, yeah.
And it was probably the one that was most satisfying to beat, particularly without the prosthetics. Guardian Ape.
Oh, yes. Okay, yeah, cool. I'm glad you had fun with that one, because I Found that fight to be very difficult, not particularly frustrating, just difficult. Typically, I avoid getting frustrated with these types of games, sort of thing, but...
Oh, I don't.
Oh, that one was, it was tough, I do remember. And it also really adds insult to injury when he picks a piece of shit out of his ass and kills you with that. So that's also not ideal.
But you want him to do that attack, though.
Yeah, big
Because you
window.
can just run under him.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one was, again... and there's probably a good time to say that at no point did I miss prosthetics in this run except for the firecrackers. I've already mentioned it 2 times. This one would have been one where it would have been hella useful because Guardian 8 being a beast boss, particularly in phase 1 before it goes headless. And
it was the only way I could get him. Fair play to you for managing to crack that bastard with no firecrackers.
Yeah, patience, man. It's just patience, learning the moveset.
How many attempts?
Maybe 10.
Yeah, that's pretty good, man.
Maybe 10.
Yeah, I reckon it took me about maybe 10 to get to the second stage.
It was tough, but you just with patience, learning the moves, not being too aggressive, but at the same time, this game wants you to be aggressive, so it's a real fine balance. But phase 2 actually becomes a lot easier, I found.
Certainly. Phase
way
2
more
is
erratic
easier.
Movement, but much slower. You can sort of run away, bait it into doing that dive attack where it slides along the floor.
That's one of the most erratic moves he's got, but the thing is he has a long recovery time from that, so that's also quite beneficial.
Exactly. Get 2 or 3 hits in. 9 times out of 10, he'll then do that terror scream afterwards.
That you just got to run away from.
Run behind him because there's no, like, all of the range on it is in front of him.
Oh, do you know, I hadn't realised that.
Yeah, no, if you run away from, if it's facing you and you run away, you'll get hit a bunch. If you run behind, easy, won't get hit.
And he has a telegraph sign for that. He makes a certain noise or something just before he does it.
You can see him breathing in.
That's
like,
it.
you can see the air coming in, and then he goes... But yeah, so you just, again, patience, waiting for your opportunities to attack. No more than 2 or 3 hits at a time unless you manage to stun him, in which case go for 5 or 6. Run away, come back. Got there in the end, man. But it was a toughie.
I'm sure that was a hard-fought battle, man, but congratulations on smashing the Guardian 8 and Stage 2 as well.
It was, as I say, it was the most satisfying one for that very reason, because I have since done it on my other file as well.
Oh, yeah.
And I used firecrackers and it was fucking easy. Did it first time. Like, it just makes a mockery.
Well, once you've beaten the boss, they're all easy, sort of thing. Once you've beaten them, they're easy, because it's a rhythm game, isn't it? More than anything.
Yeah.
Once you've got that rhythm, boom. Even easier than Dark Souls. I find that the ones on Dark Souls, they can still pull out some unpredictable bullshit, basically. But in Sekiro, if you've got those attack timings down, you're golden. You don't need the prosthetic. You could easily complete the game using the prosthetic the first time through, and then your second playthrough, no prosthetic, no problem, just because you know the timings.
It was a learning experience, and actually playing the game this way as a sort of, not a first playthrough, but a first playthrough that's had any sort of extended time put into it, I certainly feel I'm better at the game for that. So for that, I thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. I was thinking, actually, it really does force you to get in tune with that rhythm element of the game.
Yeah.
Because as you said before, the prosthetic just makes things a hell of a lot easier, basically. It just kind of, it shortcuts you to that death blow by filling up their poise meter to the point where you break their poise. Yeah,
and not only that, but with beast enemies, it stuns them so much that you get that initial posture sort of bonus, and then you're hitting them 5 or 6 times, which only increases that.
Yeah.
And the lower health an enemy has, the slower they regenerate their posture too.
That's right.
It's just
and the more posture damage you do.
All things that would have made my life a lot easier and quicker, but honestly weren't needed. So it was good. It was a good way to learn the game. But yeah, once you do those 2 bosses, and the other boss that is essential for the Shura ending, which is the folding screen monkeys, which is not a boss really. It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle. Relatively frustrating when you sort of are learning their patterns and what each one does, but once you know, you know. And it's very, like, there's no like, if you die to folding screen monkeys, I'm sorry, but you need to have a long hard look at yourself, because nothing in there can really kill you. It sometimes spawns some monkeys that can inflict the terror buff on you, which if it gets to full will kill you instantly, similar to Curse in the Dark Souls series. But they're 2-shotters, and there's only ever, I think the most I ever had chasing me was 5, and that was because I just got unlucky with some spawns, but at no point did they come near killing me. So that one was fine. It just took a bit of time. So then for the Shura ending, what the game then forces you to do is go back to meet your Lord Kuro in the Ashina Castle, where you actually fight Genashiro, who I was mentioning earlier. And your daddy's there.
Big Daddy Owl.
Big Daddy Owl is there.
With a great bushy beard.
Great big bushy beard.
And big old ponytail too. Like a lot of hair this guy
Yeah,
has.
he's like a big boss if he just let everything grow out.
Yeah. And he gives you an ultimatum, sort of abandon Kuro, who's like your master child person, who's
You're sort of his assigned protector, aren't you?
exactly. And he brought you back to life. He gave you some of his dragon's blood, and that's how you can resurrect and all that good stuff. And Big Daddy Owl says, forsake him and join me. And this is the only thing I looked up in the run, because I was so paranoid that I had done all this work
the wrong option.
and I'd pressed the wrong option.
Man,
right?
f*** that iron code.
Exactly. So it's like, I was like, oh man, I double checked. I checked myself. I looked up and I was like, okay, no, I am forsaking
That
Kuro.
is permitted,
Okay,
yeah.
that's cool. All right, sweet. Because the last thing I wanted is to do like all these hours. And
I
then...
did tell you that a completion wasn't good enough. It needed to be
Exactly.
bad ending.
Exactly. So did it. And what that then gives you is a final. It's 2 bosses, but really it's just a boss with 3 health bars. You fight Emma, who is the lady who sort of upgrades your healing item previously, and she will kill you in 2 hits. Particularly because I had
Such
basically
a short
no
health
health.
bar. Yeah.
But once you learn the attack patterns and what you can dodge and what you're meant to do, you can literally kill her without getting hit. So that became a free. Eventually, I died a bunch, but it became a free health bar on the boss. And then you get Ishin Ashina, which is the same final boss as if you did a legit playthrough, I believe, but with a different move set, different look, and obviously a different arena. This one was also very tough, but not in the same way where Genichiro was tough and also a little bit fucked. This one was a quintessential Souls boss. It was tough, but it was incredibly fair. The phase 1 moveset was relatively easy to dodge or parry once you knew what you were doing. But again, you're dying in 1 or 2 shots. And I probably should have mentioned this with Genichiro, but I'll mention it here. If you do get a hit and you want to go and heal yourself, fuck me, make sure you're a fucking long way away from these cunts, because they will shimmy across the floor.
Yeah, those button-reading sons of bitches.
And they will literally, what you've just healed, they will knock off again and possibly even kill you with a second one. So you really have to be a long way away to heal. But phase 1 really didn't give me too much trouble. I died to it a few times, sure, but it didn't give me too much trouble. Phase 2, though, oi, wow. He gets this mad fire attack where he can summon pillars of fire up from the ground, which will knock you into the air and give you the burn debuff straight away, which means your poise doesn't recover, as well as ticking your health down. He then runs in at you, does some crazy shit where he spins his sword around and hits you like 15 times, and then will run at you and do a slice. Suffice to say, that is pretty much a one-shot if you get hit by all of it. And the amount of times I got to phase 2 and then it was like, oh, wow, I've just died straight away. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Because final time I'm going to say it, if I'd had the firecrackers, I could have stunned him out the animation. Life would have been good. Because essentially the rest of the fight is phase 1 with a few extra fiery bits.
Yeah.
But I learnt the tactic. There are bits, you can see where the fire pillars are going to come from because there's flaming embers on the floor, which is where they come up from. You can run to a clear bit. You then have time when the flame goes down to nearly the floor again, you can actually run through it and it doesn't hurt you.
Okay.
So you can run away from the other one, and then if you just keep running, you will eventually avoid the slashy hit to finish. And I'm very pleased to tell you that I was able to beat it.
Hey!
So
Well done, man. Well done
I
for
did achieve
persevering.
the Shura ending, and therefore did complete the challenge.
Well done, man. Well done. Truly well deserved. Game complete. Shura ending. No ninja prosthetics.
Only prosthetics and 15 and a half hours total playthrough.
Ah, very nice. Very
And as I
nice.
say, genuinely 4.5, maybe even 5 hours of that was Genichiro.
Yeah, well, that's cool. I mean, because that was for sure next to the Guardian 8, one of the fights that I had more trouble with. And just fair play to you for managing to get through it all without using any ninja prosthetics. Because even though you've been talking about the firecrackers, there are quite a few other prosthetics that you could find very useful during that. Like the axe, for instance, you'll still take damage while you're using it. It's basically impossible to knock you out of that attack animation. So if you've got enough health bar to take the hit, and you purchase the follow-up move, which allows you to do a spinning move after you do the axe thing, if you're getting to their kind of almost the point where you've got your death blow, you just think, fuck it, just do that move. I've got the health.
Yeah.
I'll finish the fight now. Rather than thinking, oh, I've got to be careful, you know, or
Yeah.
he's right at the end. You know, when that greed brain starts coming in, you see a sliver of health left. Or
Oh
like,
yeah, that got me a couple of times.
yeah,
For sure.
or a tiny bit of poise on the bar left to fill in.
Yeah.
It gets you. You do start getting careless. You make the wrong mistake, and sometimes those it's not particularly honorable, but you know, sometimes those ninja prosthetics really come in handy. I've yet to do something as disgusting as like get a boss down to 1 HP and then finish them off with a shuriken or something like that. But hey man, I can live the dream someday.
There were times when, I mean, I don't think I've used all of the prosthetics in my other playthroughs where I have been using prosthetics, but of the ones that I've found, firecrackers would have been hands down the most. Like if you'd said you can use one prosthetic in this whole run, it would have been firecrackers. That was like hands down. The axe would have been useful because the axe deals a lot of poise as well.
A lot of poise damage, yeah.
So for one mini boss in particular, I think it's just called Armored Guy or or Armored Man. I don't know what the fuck it was called. But you can't chip away its health at all. It's so
is this the
heavily
guy
armored.
that's speaking in English? I think people refer to him as the Dark Souls boss of the game because he's all in Dark Souls armor. He's like in a full plate armor and stuff like that.
Yeah. And mine, because obviously, as I do with games like this, I put it in Japanese with English subtitles. But he's an essential mini boss you have to fight, and you have to get him poise damage down right to the bottom, and then get him near the edge of a bridge, and you have to kick him off the bridge. You can't just death blow him because he's so armored.
That's right.
And hilariously, like when he falls up, because I think the lore behind it is he's there to get the rejuvenating waters for his son, so the son can survive. And his son's called Robert. So when he's falling off the cliff, he goes, Robert.
Yeah.
But in Japanese,
does he really?
It's Roberto. And that popped me. I won't lie.
That's interesting because I mean, like I had it set to English, I think, just so I could not have to read the subtitles the whole time. Typically, I'm the same as you. I go for Japanese, but I think I was running 2 simultaneous playthroughs, one on my PlayStation, one on my PC. I had one on English, one on PC. And I only remember him speaking in English. I'm just thinking, well, that's really weird because he's clearly meant to be a Western character. So why would he add the extra bit on the rubber?
I don't know, but it was funny. It made me laugh. So the axe would have been handy for that because you could do a huge chunk of poise without having to worry too much. And the only other one that I probably would have gotten some use out of would have been the umbrella one.
Oh yeah, because
there was one, and I'm a little bit ashamed of this, but it is what it is. There was one boss that I had to cheese because I didn't know how else to do it. It's a boss called Snake Eyes Shirahagi. And what you can do, you're basically in this poisonous pit before you get to the hidden forest, and therefore the corrupted monk boss I was talking about earlier. And there's poison pools everywhere, and there's mobs in the arena, right? What I ended up doing was you kill some of the mobs and the boss doesn't see you, sneak around the back of the boss to do the instant death blow for one of their health bars, and then I ran to a certain point of the map where the boss would follow me into the poison pool.
Oh yeah.
And what I then had to do was exactly. And then what I then had to do to stop it from just walking out of the poison is I'd have to run to the edge of a cliff, bait it into doing its shooting attack because this boss had a gun, baiting it into its shooting attack in the poison. So I'd run back to then be missed, but then I'd have to run forward again so it didn't walk back to try and hit me. If I'd had the umbrella, I could have just stood there with the umbrella up and just let it shoot me ad nauseum. Would have been quicker. But aside from that, I really didn't miss the prosthetics too much. And admittedly, I haven't used all of them. But yeah, man, this was a good challenge. It was good fun. I was very happy I was able to do it, given I was only able to play in sort of 2-3 hour stints at most.
Yeah, no, I'm really pleased that you had a good time playing this game. Being a FromSoft game, although it's not strictly a Souls-like, there was a slight sort of level of surprise that you hadn't sort of got through this one already, just given that I know that we're both, very big FromSoft fans, very big Souls fans. But I'm really pleased that this challenge has finally got you to turn around and crack it. And also it sounds like it's kind of sparked your interest in the game again anew, and you'll be playing through it again to get the good ending. All good news, man. It sounds like the game has kind of clicked in your head now. Did you have that sort of light bulb moment where you realized what the game was about? Once you threw away all your Dark Souls knowledge and fully immersed yourself in the world of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice?
I would say I did, yeah. It's kind of an odd one though, because I knew this going into it. I knew what the game was about and I knew what I had to do, but your muscle memory just takes over.
It's exactly that. Yeah. It's one thing someone telling you, and it's another thing you learning it, yourself, sort of thing.
Especially because the first few bosses and mini bosses don't really force you to. Like, you can get by not.
Yeah.
So as a result, like the first few bosses, you can just be a Souls player playing Sekiro and you can get by. But when you get to like Genichiro, Guardian Ape, or these later game bosses, and I imagine, obviously Ishin Ashina that I fought, and Ishin Sword Saint, is it? The one that's the actual legit one? There's no way you can Souls that. You have to play Sekiro for that. But yeah, so thanks again. Look forward to playing more of it. And apologies in advance for next week's catch-up, because that'll probably be what it is if I get some time to play it. So
nice one, man. Well, once again, congratulations. A point well earned. And through adversity, difficult times, you managed it. So well done, man.
Is that now 5-4?
5-4, yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Nose back in front. Until you beat this challenge.
Well, okay, you're sounding confident for me. That's good.
Well, you have the skill to do it.
Do I have the health right now?
That's the question.
Physical health.
Because I would say that whilst this game isn't as intense as Sekiro, it will certainly require you to be on point for some of it. Some of it you'll probably just breeze through, but I think it's fair to say it's not a Souls-like, but it's quite similar. But it's a completely different franchise. And if that hasn't given it away, then I don't know what will. So, without further ado, this week, Will, you're going to be playing Jedi Fallen Order on Jedi Master difficulty.
Oh, what? Oh my god. What? I don't know, man. I need to complete the game on Jedi Master difficulty. I think I just need to play it for a decent amount of time, because I did stick this game on one of the hardest difficulties to play with, and I absolutely got my ass kicked, but I think that was more just unfamiliarity with the game. It was this specific frog enemy on the first planet, and he was tough.
Oh, yeah, you're not meant to fight him straight away.
Yeah, I just was like, no, I will beat you.
Yeah, you're not meant to fight. He's like a mid to end game boss.
Okay, well, thank you for telling me that. I now know not to waste like 4
and also,
hours
it's not
of my
compulsory, so you don't need to do it.
Okay. So I now know not to waste 4 hours on that single boss out of the challenge. Right. So okay, that's good.
Yeah, but no. So the reason I'm specifically saying Jedi Master difficulty is because I know that you're an experienced Souls player, and it basically just
there's a lot of similarities. Yeah,
it will make it more fun for you, honestly, because I've played the game both on the normal difficulty and Jedi Master, which is the equivalent of hard, and normal was way too easy. Way too until the final boss.
I did actually start the game on normal after having so much difficulty with that frog guy, and you're right, the game becomes a bit of a joke at that point. Then it becomes suddenly like just a playthrough experience rather than anything else. Yeah,
so Jedi Master, it will give you a good challenge. You just got to complete it. You don't have to explore everything. I'm not making you collect all 4 Sekos. Like none of that nonsense. Just get through it. Have some fun with it, man. It'll be relatively intense, but provided your health stays up.
I'm either going to smash this challenge or keel over tomorrow. We'll see.
It's very much achievable. For context, I did a run where I didn't get everything and I didn't explore everywhere, but I explored at least 2 planets to 100% and like fought everything I could possibly fight. 20 hours I finished it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
that gives me some confidence then.
So it's not going to be like, oh, you need to put 30 hours into this to finish it. Is you can do this. I think you'll have fun with it. It'll be a good challenge, as I say, and I look forward to hear how you get on, man.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy with this challenge. It's definitely a game that I've enjoyed playing before. Fell off of it at one point or another for one reason or another, but absolutely looking forward to getting back into this game. It was a game that I enjoyed playing a lot when it came out and when I finally got hands-on with it, and I'm very much looking forward to finally completing this bad boy.
So with that, we come to the end of episode 14. Thank you for sticking with us if you've made it this far. If you enjoyed what you listened to, then please do make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you find podcasts. Just search for Total Pod Mode and we're sure to be there. We also post regular video content of our playthroughs, stream highlights, as well as the podcast in its entirety on our YouTube channel, Total Pod Mode.
You can also find us on Twitter by searching for @TotalPodMode, all one word.
And whilst you're there, you can find me on Twitter @Mr. Bames, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/MrBames_TPM.
And you can find me at Hoodafunk on Twitter, and I'm also on Twitch under twitch.tv/Hoodafunk.
And with that, thank you for joining us. Will, we made it. Neither of us died.
Are we going to make it to the next episode, or is this our farewell to the listeners?
Well, let's hope not. Let's hope we can make it to next week.
Yeah.
Because, if we don't make it, then that means I win the challenge by de facto.
Oh, fuck, no.
So,
okay, well, I'll stay alive for at least another week then.
Exactly. At least get it level. Oh, dearie me. So once again, a big thank you to our listeners. It really means a lot that you stick with us, and even when we're dying, basically, recording. Please do share with your friends. Rate us 5 stars where you can. It really does help. And we look forward to bringing you more content in the future.
Yeah, hopefully with a little increased energy on the next episode. We're both flagging. We just want to go to bed.
Oh, dear me. And with that, let's go to bed.
Not together, though. Creepy.
Well, let's not rule anything out.
Yeah, we're getting a little too close during this podcast.
Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.